pre-diabetes. 50% of these undiagnosed, with an estimated increase in cases up to 1.3 billion by 2045. And 2045 is not far off, hardly 15 years more. You will be just doubling the number of diabetic patients. And on the other hand, it is not only the number, it is the killing disease which we have. It is killing us like anything, with India being the largest contributor to regional diabetes mortality. More than 1 million people died, and it is attributed to diabetes or it is related complications in 2019, which is the second highest number of deaths of all IDF regions. Also, our population with type 2 diabetes have higher burden of poorly controlled diabetes. It's again very thing, and it is again very unique with us. Whether you take tight study or ICMR in diabetes study, we have a lot many poorly controlled diabetes. And if you talk about glycemic control, it is only 20 to 24% of our type 2 diabetic patients. They are meeting the targets of A1C of less than 7%. 76.6% patients are uncontrolled. They are just uncontrolled. Reasons may be many. But it may be anything from one end to another end. There can be many reasons, but the most consistent reason is poor compliance or adherence to diet or lifestyle modification. Secondly, we have a very strong association of type 2 diabetes and hypertension. So it's a big nexus between type 2 diabetes and hypertension, and which accounts to around 60% of patients with type 2 diabetes having hypertension and are uncontrolled glycemic. So you can just imagine uncontrolled hypertension, uncontrolled glycemia in 60% of our type 2 diabetic population. You can just imagine the amount of complications we are going to have. And with this chronic uncontrolled glycemia, this chronic hyperglycemia, it often leads to macro and microvascular complications that associated with increased morbidity and mortality risk in patients with type 2 diabetes. There is 2 to 3-fold increase in cardiovascular disease and also mortality. Prevalence of ESRD is 10 times higher. 15% of all deaths due to CVD or CKD in patients with diabetes. So management of type 2 diabetes should be focused on long-term vascular benefit in patients with type 2 diabetes. So what we aim for management of diabetes? We want glucometabolic benefit. We want to control fasting plasma glucose. We want to control postprandial glycemia. We want to control or reach A1C goal. We want to decrease. By doing so, we want to decrease glycemic variability. We want to decrease hypoglycemia risk. And also we want to improve quality of life. This is glucometabolic benefits. Then we want to have viscerometabolic benefit. That means we want to reduce weight. We want to decrease abdominal adiposity and all adipokines which are harmful to us. We want to decrease it. Then we want to have vasculometabolic benefit. That means we want the molecules or drugs which we are using, they should be cardiovascular safe or cardiovascular protective, and they should be renal safe or renal protective. So these are the three aims which we want to treat in today's scenario. So what this all means? Students, it clearly indicates to us that our glucophenotype is very different from Western population, or you can say Caucasian population. It's a very different absolutely poles apart. They are just poles apart. And I want to tell you that there is a mnemonic of 6S. 6S is the mnemonic which signifies how we are different from Caucasian or Western counterpart. First S is severity of the disease. Once a type 2 diabetic patient presenting to you, it is most of the time they are having A1C value of more than 9% or fasting plasma glucose of 170 to 200. Postprandial glycemia is obviously 250 to 300. So they are more severe form of diabetes once they present to you. Secondly, it's most of the time it is symptomatic. And most of the symptoms in our scenario is more of catabolic type symptoms. Osmotic symptoms are more. That indicates our beta cells are deteriorating very fast. Then speed of progression. Speed of progression is very rapid in our scenario. Southeast Asian country or Indian population with type 2 diabetes, they have got the very rapid speed of progression, and thus it is just double the speed of progression. That means deterioration of beta cells in comparison to Western population, and around 30 to 40% of our population within first three years, just within first 3 years, they require insulin for their glycemia management. Then fourth has a syndromic association. We have got very strong nexus of hypertension, dyslipidemia, obesity, overweight, sedentarism, and smoking in around 70 to 80% of our type 2 diabetic population. So it's a more of syndromic, it's a big nexus. Then sickness. We have right at the time of diagnosis, 30% of our population of type 2 diabetes, they have already developed or progressed micro and macrovascular complication right at the time of diagnosis. Then surgery is the sixth S. That means most of the time our patients, they require cataract surgery. And if you see cataract surgery, 30-year, 35-year, 40-year boy or person is having cataract surgery, going for cataract surgery, which used to be 60 plus age. So 20 years lesser, now it has been there, 20-year lesser age for cataract surgery. PTCA requirement, CABG requirement, renal transplant requirement, 40-year-old requiring renal transplant. Diabetic foot ulcer, not healing, non-healing diabetic, recurrent diabetic foot ulceration. They are very, very common in our type 2 diabetic population, and most of the time they require surgery. So what I mean that we have a malignant type of diabetes. It's not a benign, slowly progressive diabetes. We are blessed or somewhat notoriously blessed with a malignant type of diabetes in India. And to manage it, you can see there are various international guidelines, and our national guideline of RSSDI, ESI, Endocrine Society of India 2020 guidelines. They recommend proactive upfront management with a patient-centric multifactorial approach in management of diabetes. So clearly, diabetes management has shifted in all guidelines from one size fits all, from glucocentricity to care to targeting multifactorial factors and care for individualized approach, intensified multifactorial intervention of the known modifiable risk factor like blood pressure, hyperlipidemia, obesity, sedentarism, and smoking, and it should be applied for to prevent late diabetes-related complications with ambitious treatment goals. It has to be more proactive, try to achieve the goals in a shorter duration of time. We have to go away from clinical or therapeutic inertia. Our therapeutic inflection time has to be very short, 3 to 6 months. Don't wait the drug or molecule to fail. To have a clear vision of multifactorial approach, that what is a multifactorial approach with patient centricity, let's discuss this slogan of invest in ABCDEF approach and gain years of life. And what do you mean by A? A is basically A1C control, and we will see whether by managing A1C, and we have to look at the consequences on diabetes and its complications, what A1C leads to, a controlled A1C leads to any benefit or not. We will see the evidence also. Then we look at the evidence for B, for the blood pressure control, its consequences on diabetes and its complications. Then we will look at C, that is cholesterol control, its consequences, or broader prospect dyslipidemia management, its consequences on diabetes and its complications. D is the role of diet, eating habits in management of type 2 diabetes. E is for sedentarism or sedentary lifestyle or no exercise impacting diabetes control, and F is regular follow-up impacting diabetes control. So this is the acronym or a sort of slogan to just you can have that there are 6 factors which are the main pillars for diabetes management. So if you look at the first 3 factors, that is A1C control, blood pressure control, and cholesterol control, they are most of the time you can say that A1C control, blood pressure control, cholesterol control, they are healthcare physician related. So we all has to be aware about achieving these targets in a stipulated time frame. So healthcare physician related issues mainly, but never it is only 50% done by the healthcare physician. Patients involvement and patients awareness should not be ruled out. So we cannot rule out patient awareness and involvement in achieving these 3 goals. But if you see the last 3, that is D, F, E, patient's active involvement is required, because until unless patient wants to change his dietary habits or dietary pattern or dietary schedule, or patient has tried to become more physically active or try to be involved in exercise programs, and patient wants to go for the follow-up visits to doctor, so it's a completely demanding for the patients, and patient requires commitment and desire to participate in diabetes management activities. So these three are somewhat 70% has to be done by the patient, 30% onus is on the healthcare physician, whereas previous ABC, they are 50% by healthcare physician and 50% involvement by the patient. So in a nutshell, patient involvement is an integral part of diabetes management. So now let's see first of all A part, that is A1C control in type 2 diabetes. So the learning started from UKPDS. UKPDS, which enrolled treatment naive patients, around 5,000 patients were there, less than 5-year duration of diabetes were there, and they were very mild high risk patients, and they're not having established atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. They were milder type of patients, and we had two arms. One arm was having intensive treatment and another was conventional treatment. And intensive treatment has lifestyle modification plus monotherapy arm, where sulfonylureas, insulin, and metformin in obese patients were the monotherapy. And then if there is a requirement, then we have combined therapy of sulfonylureas and metformin also, and metformin with insulin also. So there was combined, the treatment protocols were also there. So learning from UKPDS gave us that every A1C 1% reduction with intensive control treatment is associated with the risk reduction for all-cause mortality by 6%, diabetes-related death by 10%, myocardial infarction by 16%, microalbuminuria went down by 33%, retinopathy progression went down by 21%, microvascular complications went down by 25%, and any diabetes related endpoints went down by 12%. We had 10-year follow-up study of a UKPDS, that is 5 years was the duration of trial, and then we had 10-year follow-up. So in total, it was 15 years follow-up, and around 3,200 patients were there in follow-up study. And the between group difference in A1C, if you see the A1C achieved, that was lost within first year of the follow-up of the study. First year of the follow-up of the study, both curves, they come together. So A1C difference was just lost within first year part of the trial. SU, sulfonylureas and insulin arm, any diabetes related endpoint was decreased by 9% on follow-up after 10 years. Microvascular complication went down by 24%. Myocardial infarction, now it became very statistically significant, 15% decrease. All-cause mortality on follow-up, 13% decrease. Whereas metformin group was very overwhelmingly much more superior projections were there. Metformin group showed significant relative risk decrease, and it persisted for follow-up regarding any diabetes-related endpoint, 21% decrease. Myocardial infarction, 33% decrease. All-cause mortality, 27% decrease. And that's how we had a term that is known as legacy effect. That means the window period of management of diabetes is first 5 to 6 years. If you try to achieve intensive glycemic control within first 5 years, you will have benefits, or you will have so many good fruits to be there waiting for you after 10 to 15 years down the lane. You can have decreased progression, you can prevent the occurrence and progression of both micro and macrovascular complication, and this is known as the legacy effect. We had another long-term landmark trial looking at the A1C control, and it was advanced trial. So, and what were the questions? A1C control, its consequences in diabetes and complications, intensive glucose control with glycoside XR, extended release based regimen in advanced studies associated with reduction in risk of major micro and macrovascular events and ESRD in patients with type 2 diabetes. Major micro and macrovascular events at 5 years of the trial period decreased by 10%. ESRD, requirement of dialysis, requirement of transplantation at 5 years decreased by 65%. Remarkable decrease. and at 10 years it is 46% decrease. And these benefits were consistent across all baseline characteristics of A1C, ASCVD risk, albuminuria, and eGFR level or CKD stages. So here in advanced trial, we had around 11,000 patients, and 5 year was the trial period and 10-year was the follow-up period. So you can just see by controlling A1C with the molecule glycoside XR, I will label it as a molecular effect. We don't have that much long-term trials with glimepiride. Only thing we had in Carolina trial. But with glycoside XR, we have got definite evidence from advanced trial that there is benefit in macroscopic complication, and also there is a good legacy effect. We will talk about legacy effect from advanced trial. Now moving to B part of the acronym ABCDEF. B part is, here you have blood pressure control in patient with diabetes. There is a tremendous rise in coexistence of hypertension and diabetes, and it has been observed in India. We had a SITE study, SITE study, where 15,000 patients were included, more than 15,000 patients. 20.7% of patients had both diabetes and hypertension. And the answer came that 59.5% patients with diabetes have hypertension, 44.7% patients with hypertension have diabetes. So it's a both way. Both are coexisting in good number of your patients, around 50 to 70% patients. But this association is not simple association. Framingham study, global data, Framingham study, more than 11,000 patients were included. 57% of CV events are due to hypertension and diabetes co-association. 70%, 72% of all cause mortality is due to hypertension and type 2 diabetes co-association. So the risk of CV events increased by 50% once you have this co-association with each other, and CV mortality risk increased by 70% once you have diabetes with co-associated with hypertension. So this combo is a big factor. It's a big demon to us, and it is denting our healthcare infrastructure in a very big way. Now, the evidence of control of blood pressure in type 2 diabetes, once I will again go back to UKPDS trial, where there is an embedded study of around 1100 patients. We don't talk about this embedded study of because it somewhat it is missed. Many times when you look at UKPDS, this embedded study for hypertension part is somewhat missed, but 1100 patients were there in this study, and the follow-up was around 8.4 years, where we tried to decrease blood pressure from 154 by 87 to 142 by 82, and the median follow-up was 8.4 years, and we use ACE inhibitors or beta blockers to decrease the blood pressure, and there was decreased risk of both micro and macrovascular complication very significantly. So this was the UKPDS again. Now from advanced trial, we had a BP lowering arm, that is BPLA arm from advanced trial, intensive blood pressure control with ACE inhibitors and diuretics in a combination regimen in advanced study reduced the combined micro and macrovascular events and total mortality at 5-year follow-up. BP reduction was minus 5.6 to minus 2.2. Combined major and microvascular events at 5 years decreased by 9%, and total mortality at 5 years decreased by 14%. So this was the result from blood pressure lowering arm from advanced trial. Also, highly significant renal benefits came out. So sometime we say that advanced trial has got much more indications for renal trial. We try to search out renal trials now from DAPA CKD, from Credence trial, but never forget this. It has excellent evidence. I cannot say that it is somewhat even lesser than you have got Credence or DAPA CKD. It is much more than your DAPA CKD and Credence trial, because intensive blood pressure control with ACE inhibitors in advanced study also provided renal benefit at 5-year follow-up, irrespective to baseline blood pressure, eGFR levels, and CKD stages. It prevented microalbuminuria by 21%. Macroalbuminuria regression was done in 16%, and worsening of nephropathy or retarding of nephropathy was decreased by 18%. So this was the remarkable impact of blood pressure control by using ACE inhibitors and diuretic in advanced trial on all renal endpoints. And this was irrespective of blood pressure control, irrespective of baseline eGFR, and irrespective of CKD stage also. So it's a very important. Yes, you cannot ignore SGLT2 inhibitor because we are living in a present era of SGLT2 inhibitors. SGLT2 inhibitor showed these benefits over and above ACE and ARB. So you cannot deny that thing. 80 to 90% of population patients included in DAPA, CKD, and credence, they had already ACE and ARBs with them. So whatever benefit you got from SGLT2 inhibitor, we cannot snatch away benefits from DAPA, CKD, and credence because of this value, because they are already had these molecules at their baseline. So whatever the benefit you got, it is over and above this standard of care, guideline directed standard of care. But you cannot ignore advance, where you had 11,000, more than 11,000 patients. Around 700 patients, they were normoalbuminuria, whereas albuminuria, microalbuminuria was there in 26% patient, macroalbuminuria was there in 4% patient. EGFR was less than 60 ml in 20% of patients. So they were already high risk CKD patient, established diabetic kidney disease patient, and there you got so much benefit in all renal endpoints. Now moving to cholesterol control, another acronym that is C part of ABCDEF acronym, and we will go with the first pivotal trial, that is CARDS trial. CARDS study, around 3,000 patients, 40 to 75-year-old patients, 10 milligram of atorvastatin, only simple 10 milligram of atorvastatin. In CARD study, primary prevention of CVD with statin in type 2 diabetes was established because there is a reduced risk of CV events. Composite endpoint decreased by 37%, acute coronary events decreased by 36%, coronary revascularization decreased by 31%, and stroke decreased by 48%. So this was the primary prevention part from CARDS trial. Then we had ESCORT trial. ESCORT trial was basically population studied were all hypertensive patients. They were all hypertensive and with at least three risk factors for chronic heart disease, including diabetes. So that was there in 24% of patients. Microalbuminuria was there in 61% of patients. Cholesterol high was there in around 25% of patients. So, and the number of patients, they were around 10,000 in ESCORT trial with a median follow-up around 3.3 years. They used 10 milligram of statin, 10 milligram of atorvastatin. With amlodipine plus minus perindopril plus atorvastatin 10 milligram, fatal, non-fatal stroke. Relative risk reduction at 5 years, 31%. Non-fatal MI, fatal cardiac heart disease, decreased by 53%, relative risk reduction at 5 years. So significant benefits in these patients who are hypertensive, plus they have got 3 or more than 3 CV risk factor. So, but and also interestingly, ESCORT trial was very interesting trial. We have got legacy study from ESCORT trial also. We had legacy study from UKPDS. We have got legacy study from advanced trial. Then we have got legacy study from ESCORT trial also. Very few people are knowing. The ESCORT trial had got legacy study of 16-year follow-up. And these benefit in CV risk events, they persisted even up to the follow-up of total follow-up of 16 years. So there is a definite legacy effect. So cholesterol decrease, legacy effect, blood pressure decrease, legacy effect, and also there is a legacy effect of glycemia reduction. So these are the basic trial. Many people, they will say there is no legacy effect of blood pressure, but we do have evidence. We do have maybe smaller evidence, but we definitely do have evidence also. But having said that, we must stress upon 3 last part. So it's a ABCDEF acronym. So we have to stress on diet, we have to stress on exercise, and we have to stress on regular monitoring on follow-up. As these 3 are the key points for or key things for active involvement of the patients, and also they require commitment from the patient. And these are the key factors because better management of blood glucose levels can be achieved with these 3. Achieve target blood pressure or lipid control with these 3. Healthy blood pressure, healthy body weight can be achieved with these 3. And we can prevent or slow the development of diabetes-related complications with these 3 parts. So, but they require active involvement or commitment from patients in the management of diabetes. Now, this is very important because the impact of patient involvement on glycemic control. Many times you will see that uh, uh, we are seeing patient and our contact time with the patient is only 2 minutes, only 2 minutes. For a diabetic patient, at least 15 to 20 minutes is required to impart diabetes education, to have to tell him what is the disease, how he has to manage, what is the dietary therapy he has to take, what type of physical activity, exercise, how he has to take medication. So very simple. And if he requires insulin and monitoring, then again 15 minutes more are to be given to the patient. But many times we see that our time contact period, eye to eye contact, is very negligible, and only 2 to 3 minutes has been given to the patient. As the health literacy, or you can say shared decision making and the patient centric approach, we all know it, where patient is the integral part or is at the center of the diabetes management program, with active participation in decision making. And definitely, if we do it, if we involve our patient in active management programs, then definitely you can see there is A1C decrease 1.4 times or 1.24 times. The difference is patient versus shared decision making. If you involve the patient, you will have 1.4% decrease in HbA1c. If you already only take onus on yourself and don't involve your patient, again you are losing 1.24% from HbA1c. So patient involvement is a key. Patient has to be in the center of your therapy, center of your diabetes program, center of your regimen. Everything has to be there, revolve around the patient's need, awareness, willingness, and patient's needs, and everything has to be there, patient centric approach. So now, to get active patient involvement, we all agree that patient should be in the center of management. Now, how to involve patient actively? So to get patient involvement actively, what should we do? What should be a healthcare provider should do? Actually, healthcare provider, and or rather we all should follow a structured program for improvement in active patient involvement. How it can be then done? Establishing and maintaining communication with the patient. We have to communicate the disease, its complications, its therapy, how to prevent it to the patient. We have to educate the patient for self management of the condition, lifestyle modification, glucose monitoring, hypoglycemia risk. Then we have to evaluate patient needs. वो चाहता क्या है, वो चाहता क्या है. Then informing the patient on the treatment plan, dietary modification, weight control, smoking cessation, evaluating knowledge, how much he is knowledgeable about the disease, and the skill deficits, what are the gap between the knowledge and skill and associated with patient illness, evaluating the patient's understanding of the treatment plan, whether he is able to understand why patient doctor is writing 2 3 drugs, what is the benefit of these 2 3 drugs, evaluating the barrier to the adherence. What are the type barrier? Cost is there, traveling is there, family support is not there. So these are various barriers which can be there, or lockdown is there. So evaluating barriers to the adherence. Then monitoring the patients, assessing for regular attainment of the follow-up visit. So these are the basic thing that we should look at. This is the structured program for involvement of patient. So, and when we should do it? When we should try to impart knowledge or impart patient, it is the another acronym, that is the time to impart knowledge. That means time to impart education. Time means time to impart education. So when we should try to involve active participation or involvement of the patient in the journey of diabetes, as we say, hit when the iron is hot, when iron is red hot, you try to hit at that time, that will give you the maximum impact. There are 4 critical times when you can impart knowledge to the patient, and patient is more perceptive. Maximum perceptive are these 4 times. Number 1 is at the time of diagnosis, right at the time of during follow-up. Number 2 is during follow-up, and on when not meeting the targets. Then patient somewhat say, doctor मेरा control नहीं हो रहा, क्यों नहीं हो रहा, कैसे? At that time patient requires your education. Up, number 3, upon development of complications. Now you have developed retinopathy. Now you are coming up with diabetic kidney disease. You are having this problem, that problem. At that time, patient is much more receptive. Probably you are late at that time, but definitely patient requires education at that time. Number 4 is upon transition in life due to progressive disease, getting into elderly population or adolescent population, patient getting into marriage or pre-conceptual counseling. So At that time, patient requires definite educational awareness program, structured program. We have to tell them regarding all these things, and these are the four most receptive time when the iron is red hot. So you have to give knowledge at that time, and patient is most receptive at that time. Now we are talking about A, B, C, D, E, F. Do we have evidence of this multifactorial approach of control and getting the benefit? We have an excellent evidence for this ABCDEF approach, Steno 2 study. Single center, small number of patients, 160 patients, but much amount of follow-up. Excellent study. Landmark Steno 2 study, intensive multifactorial management of type 2 diabetes. They looked at A1C management, blood pressure management, and cholesterol management, and they wanted to ask questions whether it improves survival, whether there is decrease in CV events, and whether there is life gain, that is quality of life is improved with multifactorial approach or not. So this type of thinking was there. So this was the Steno 2 study. It was started in 1993. Participants randomized to conventional or intensive treatment in 1993. 1997 was the 4-year follow-up of microvascular outcome. Then we looked at macrovascular outcome. It was 8-year follow-up. Number of patients only 160. Danish patient, single center study with type 2 diabetes and microalbuminuria. Long duration of diabetes. 55.1 year mean age of the patient, and mean follow-up, look at the mean follow-up, it is 21.1 years of mean follow-up. Observation study began. All participants offered intensive treatment, and there was conventional arm, then intensive treatment. And after this, after 2001, all were put into intensive treatment because the benefits were overwhelming, and the ethics committee decided to not to deprive those conventional treatment part from these benefits. They started to give intensive treatment to all, and they followed up to 2006. That was a post-trial follow-up of 13 years, and 2014, that is the post-trial follow-up of 21 years. Then this was the targets they achieved in Steno 2 trial. Targets, you just look at the targets they achieved. A1C targets from 7% in conventional, it was 6.5. So 1.5% difference was there. Blood pressure less than 160/95 in conventional treatment group, whereas we achieved less than 140/85. 5 millimoles cholesterol less than 5 millimoles was achieved, whereas conventional it was less than 6.5. So what was the therapies included in intensive therapy? All participants had intensive diet and lifestyle advice. ACE, ARBs were there. Vitamin supplement, aspirin was there. Hyperglycemia, metformin, if it is more than 25 kg per meter square, BMI, then metformin was the part. Glycoside, BMI less than 25. So very, very intelligent thinking. Then metformin plus glycoside if required, then insulin. Then dyslipidemia managed with statins and fibrates. Hypertension, they manage with ACE, ARB, diuretic, CCB, and beta blockers. What they got? Just look at this. 7.9 years of life increased at 21.2 years of follow-up by this multifactorial intensive therapy. Intensive multifactorial therapy added a mean of plus 7.9 years, around 8 years of life in patients compared to conventional therapy. 8.1 year of free of CV events in the life in patients compared to conventional therapy at median of 21.1 years of the follow-up. So this was from Steno 2 trial. So before I go to summary, just I will give you the glimpse of Steno 2 trial. At the latest follow-up, you can say that latest follow-up was around 2014. So there was the latest follow-up was 2014. So what happened at 2014? 48% patient on in original intensive treatment group, they died, versus 70% patient in original conventional treatment died, meaning that patients originally randomized to the intensive treatment were 45% less likely to die than conventional treatment. Hazard ratio decreased by 0.55. So we boast about the EMPA-REG outcome trial where CVD decreased by 35%. So friends, we do have this much evidence from a multifactorial approach also. Hazard ratio of cardiovascular death all-cause mortality 0.55. Also, the median time to a patient's first CV event, or you can say death, was 16.1 year in intensive, whereas it was just 8 years in conventional treatment, suggesting that intervention targeting a multifactorial approach, multifactorial risk factor for vascular damage had a major impact on CV risk. So clearly it has to be multifactorial approach. Death from CV event or CV cause was 62% lower in intensive treatment part, 51% decrease relative risk in CVD, 20% decrease absolute risk in CVD in intensive treatment arm. So there is immense benefit in progression of diabetic retinopathy, progression of autonomic neuropathy, progression of diabetic kidney disease, and they all decrease, that is microvascular complication, they decrease around 35 to 50% with intensive treatment arm versus conventional treatment. So clearly, multifactorial ABCDEF acronym is the best acronym we should try to achieve in our patients. So I will summarize my talk. Number one, rising prevalence of diabetes leads to emergence of diabetes-related complications in India. It is basically malignant type of diabetes we have in India. It is not only diabetes, it is a complicated diabetes right from the word go. So it's always a complicated diabetes, whether it is a hidden complications or whether it is undetected complications. Most of the time, it is a hidden complication or it is an overt complications. Guidelines recommend patient-centric approach. Patient should be in the integral part of your management therapy for getting optimal glycemic control and long-term treatment benefits. Number three, ABC approach is an intensive multifactorial approach considering A1C control, blood pressure control, and cholesterol control in patients with type 2 diabetes. Number four, intensive multifactorial approach. Evidence is there from STENO2 trial, and it provides years of life gain with the free of CV events in patients with type 2 diabetes. So it's a sort of life insurance. If you manage your patients in a multifactorial way, it's a type of life insurance benefit. So success of any therapy depends on patient's involvement. So remember that success of any therapy, which may be any guideline, whatever thing you are using, whatever guideline you are following, or whatever type of algorithm you are using, but the success of any therapy depends upon patient's active involvement in management of type 2 diabetes. Patient's advice should not be ruled out. We have to listen to the patient. It's a management of diabetes through ear. We say it, management of diabetes through ear. And it should not be ruled out in patient management approach. So it has to be there in an empathetic way. You have to look at all barriers to improve adherence of the patient, compliance of the patient, and active involvement of the patient in all management program for type 2 diabetes. So I stop here. I thank you all for the patience hearing. I will be honored if I can have any questions for the discussion.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, we have one question already there in the chat box.
Yeah.
It's from Dr. Puneet. He says, nice talk, sir. With newer drugs like SGLT2 inhibitors and DPP4 inhibitors, how do you place sulfonylureas in this is today's scenario? And what stage do you start sulfonylureas in your practice?
See, Puneet, we do have SGLT2 inhibitor and DPP4 inhibitors, and I'm a prolific user of these newer molecules. But still, world over, not in my chamber, not on my pen, it is still world over, sulfonylureas metformin is the commonest prescription world over, which may be the wealthiest countries. At least 50% of you see any trial, 50% of the population is still prescribed. The most common prescription is sulfonylureas in the metformin. So you cannot deny it. You cannot deny the A1 part, that is reduction of A1C. All these molecules, SGLT2 and DPP4 inhibitor, they are slightly lesser for A1C control. Thing is that safety issue, hypoglycemia and weight gain. If you are using a molecule of glyclazide, and that is extended release glyclazide, forget about hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia related to glyclazide is the minimum. It is a Ramadan drug. Glyclazide is compared with sitagliptin, and there is even lesser hypoglycemia in comparison to sitagliptin. So they are just at par with the DPP4 inhibitor glyclazide. Glimepiride has got somewhat more hypoglycemia in comparison to glyclazide, but overall they are just nearly same. But I will give you some more points to glyclazide extended release, and it is the safest sulfonylureas which is can be used even up to ESRD. So very easy to use because its attachment part to the sulfonyl receptors are somewhat different in comparison to glimepiride, and the least hypoglycemia, and there is some amount of weight loss even with sulfonylureas, and you have got strong evidence of advanced trial with glyclazide and also with steno-2 trial. Now, looking at the where I use it, my first prescription still goes with sulfonylureas and metformin until unless you have got established atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease or patient is having heart failure, patient is having CKD. If at that time, at that these type of patient, and they are around 20 to 30% of the population of type 2 diabetes, most of your 65 to 70%, they may be having risk factor but not having established atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. There the prescription goes to sulfonylureas and metformin.
Right, sir. So we have, sir, another question from Dr. GBS. He says that thank you, sir, for your insightful presentation. How to improve patient compliance to therapy, which still remains the biggest barrier in diabetes management, especially in the Indian context?
Yes, Dr. Saab, actually, there are many barriers. But you have to tell them, you have to educate the patient, you have to communicate with the patient, you have to make patient the part of their therapy. You have to put onus on the patient's shoulder. You have to tell them that 50% is my job, 50% is your job. If you don't do, it's your health that will be suffering. You will be having all these problems in next 5 to 10 years. So you have to tell them these are the complications. We are not scared of diabetes. We are not scared of diabetes related numbers. We are scared of these complications. We are worried about these complications because at that time your body will suffer and you will have lot many issues, lot many costs or lot many problems related to management of these complications. So diabetes management starts in a dangerous zone, enters in a dangerous zone once you have complications. So you have to tell the patient that if you want to prevent, if you lead these complications and lead healthy life, full life, and even up to the normal healthy life, then you have to prevent these complications. So you have to make patients, education is the key to involve the patient. You have to educate the patient. You have to spend time with the patient. That's all.
So the next question is from our colleague. He says the message is very well received, sir. Data is very robust for glyclazide. Among sulfonylureas, what is your preferred choice? I think some part of it was answered
yes,
by you.
Yes, yeah.
Actually,
for me, the glyclazide extended release is the preferred sulfonylureas because I have got combinations with it. I have a combination with metformin. Then metformin can be 500. Metformin can be extended release also. So I can have 1000 also. And also there is some company is also having pioglitazone in it also. So I am very much comfortable with glycoside, and I have used this molecule in senile patients, high risk of hypoglycemia, also patient having EGFR of less than 45. I can manage this easily with slight down titration of the dose, and I'm finding it is a much more comfortable choice in comparison to glimepiride.
Right. Thank you, sir, for that. On the same lines, we have another question from Dr. Puneet. He says, how often do you face hypoglycemia in your patients?
See, hypoglycemia, Puneet, is basically an educational part. Minor, moderate type of hypoglycemia, which patient is able to take care of on his own, but we should not ignore these minor and milder type of hypoglycemia. Patient can take care of his own. They are somewhat frequent, sometimes once, twice, even 4 times a month can be there. Patient on insulin can have more hypoglycemia, but severe form of hypoglycemia, they are there. Say you can say that once a month or once every 2 months, we can have hypoglycemia with some when there is drug and diet mismatch, insulin related issues are there, more insulin, less diet, or forgetting diet. So sometimes you can have, but it is not that frequent, but definitely if you compare between insulin and sulfonylureas, sulfonylureas has got more severer form of hypoglycemia in comparison to insulin. Insulin hypoglycemia are short-term limited hypoglycemia, but insulin hypoglycemia are much more frequent in comparison to sulfonyl hypoglycemia.
Right. Thank you, sir. So we have another question from Dr. Gurinder Singh. He says that how do you compare gliclazide versus SGLT2 inhibitors in the treatment of diabetes?
See, the comparison is lost now. We cannot compare these two molecules. Let's say coalition time. Now we should combine. It's election time. We should combine these molecules. We should enjoy the beauty of these two molecules. We should not compare them. Cannot compare them. Glyclazide. If I can give you only one thing. If in Carolina trial you compared linagliptin with glimepiride, if we had glyclazide in comparison to linagliptin, probably Boehringer Pharma would have some tough times to explain the things, because glyclazide must have scored more than linagliptin in Carolina trial. So they chose glimepiride, but I think if it has been glyclazide, then the things would have been very different. So we cannot compare. We should enjoy the beauty of these molecules, and we should enjoy the coalition part.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think you have addressed all the questions which were there in the chat box. I think there are no more questions, so I think we can wind up the session, and would like to thank everybody here for sparing out your valuable time. And Dr. Suri, special thanks to you. And just like the topic says that gain years of life, yeah. I'm sure everybody here would have gained a lot in terms of insights into diabetes through your presentation and the inputs you have shared with us, the clinical experience of yours. So everybody would have benefited and gained a lot. So we really thank you for taking out your valuable time and helping everybody here to understand more in the management of diabetes, whether to keep the patients at the center of treatment every time, and how different parameters would benefit the patients. We really thank you for your valuable time and very nice presentation, and addressing all the queries which were there from the audience and participants.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.